Welcome back, students. Today we will discuss types of elements. Now, students, there are three types of elements: metals, non-metals, and metalloids. So, students, the first type of elements are metals. And students, let me tell you one thing, that out of total elements that we have, 65% of them are metals. Now, what are metals? Metals होता क्या है या metals होते क्या है? So, students, elements which possess luster, means which can reflect light and thus have shiny appearance. And secondly, metals are those elements which are good conductors of heat. Then they are good conductors of electricity. Then next, metals are malleable. That means they can be beaten up into sheets. And they are ductile also, which means they can be drawn into wires like copper wires, aluminium wires. They all are what? Made from metals. And students, generally metals exist as solids. Though we have one exception here. Mercury is exception because mercury is liquid at room temperature, but otherwise most of the metals are what? They are solids at room temperature. Now students, metals generally have high density. So students, these are the characteristics of metals. Common examples of elements which possess all these characteristics, that is metals, are iron, copper, silver, gold, zinc, aluminium, magnesium, calcium, sodium. They all are metals. Now students, next type of elements are called non-metals. Now what are non-metals? So students, non-metals are those elements which do not possess any luster, so they are non-lustrous. Secondly, they are brittle, that means they break easily. Then students, non-metals are non-conductors of heat and electricity. They are non-conductors of heat and electricity. Here we have an exception. Look student, carbon in the form of graphite, however, conducts electricity, and that is why we use carbon electrodes in electrolysis. One more thing students, like I've told you that non-metals are non-lustrous, means they do not possess luster, but here also we have an exception. Iodine is an exception. Iodine is lustrous. It has luster. Now, next students, non-metals can exist in all three physical states. Now, here let me give you some examples. We have non-metals like fluorine, chlorine, we have nitrogen, we have oxygen, which exist as gases at room temperature. Then we have non-metals such as bromine, which is liquid at room temperature. And then we have iodine, which is solid at room temperature. And there are other non-metals also, like these boron, carbon, sulfur, phosphorus. They all are solids at room temperature. Now students, we have third type of elements which are called metalloids. And students, this you have learnt in earlier classes also, that metalloids are those elements which possess characteristics of both metals and non-metals. That means they show characteristic properties of both metals and non-metals. The common examples of these metalloids are arsenic, antimony, bismuth, etc. So students, these are elements, but depending upon their properties, they have been subdivided into three types: metals, non-metals, and metalloids. Now students, our next topic is the second type of pure substances, which are called compounds. Now student, what do you mean by a compound? Compound hota kya hai? So student, a compound like element is a pure substance. So compound is a pure substance, like water we say is a pure compound. So a compound is a pure chemical substance which contains two or more elements combining together in a fixed proportion by weight or mass, and they can be decomposed into the constituent elements by suitable chemical methods. So what is a compound? Compound is a pure substance जो कि दो या दो से ज़्यादा एलिमेंट्स के कॉम्बिनेशन से बना होगा और ये एलिमेंट्स एक फिक्स प्रोपोर्शन बाय वेट कंबाइन करते हैं. एंड इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग, a compound can be decomposed into its constituent elements by suitable method. So here I am taking example of water. So water is a compound and its constituent elements are hydrogen and oxygen, which combine by a fixed proportion by weight. That is 2 grams of hydrogen combines with 16 grams of oxygen. Or we say simplest ratio is 1:8, but this ratio is fixed. So a compound has 2 or more elements combining together in a fixed proportion by weight. And one more thing, students, water can be decomposed into its constituent elements hydrogen and oxygen through what? Electrolysis. And you have learned this in 9th standard also, that when we electrolyze water, at cathode hydrogen is liberated and at anode oxygen is liberated. So that means a compound can be decomposed into its constituent elements. Now students, there is one important point about a compound. Like say when we say water is made up of what? Two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. So properties of hydrogen and oxygen are different. Even that of water, which is formed from these, water has a properties different than what? Hydrogen as well as oxygen. So students, this is very important point, that properties of a compound are completely different from those of its constituent element. मतलब एक compound के जो properties हैं वो उसके constituent के properties से resemble नहीं करते हैं. Now students, next we have types of compounds. So students, compounds are of two types: organic and inorganic compounds. Now first, what are organic compounds? This now I'll tell you. So students, the first type of compounds are organic compounds. And what are organic compounds? So students, compounds which are obtained or derived from living beings, that is plants and animals, they are called organic compounds. Like carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, fats, vitamins. Look, all these compounds are obtained from living beings, so these are organic compounds. And students, one more thing which you have learned in class 10, that organic compounds are essentially the carbon compounds. And in terms of modern definition, we say organic compounds are hydrocarbons or their derivatives. So many organic compounds like methane, ethane, ethanol, carboxylic acids, they all are organic compounds. Now students, second type of compounds are called inorganic compounds. Now what are inorganic compounds? So compounds which are obtained or derived from non-living beings, that is rocks and minerals, are called inorganic compounds. Compounds like rock salt, that is sodium chloride, sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, then we have marble, that is calcium carbonate. Student, all these compounds are obtained from non-living beings, so these are inorganic compounds. Now the organic compounds, students, I have told you that they contain carbon, but inorganic compounds, they may or may not contain carbon. So presence of carbon here is not essential. So student, now we have second type of substances which are impure substances, and they are called mixtures. So now we will study mixtures. Now, what is a mixture? So, student, mixture is impure material or impure substance which contains two or more components, and these components can be elements or compounds. So, a mixture is an impure substance which contains two or more components in any proportion. So, that means they are not mixed in a definite proportion, so they can be mixed in any proportion, and components of a mixture can be separated by simple physical methods. And one more thing about a mixture is that a mixture exhibits properties of its constituent, means जो mixture की property होगी वो उसके constituent की properties को show करता है. Now students, the next topic is types of mixtures. And students, depending upon like a mixture has how many phases, we have two types of mixtures: homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixture. First type is homogeneous mixtures. Now, what is a homogeneous mixture? So, a mixture that has same composition throughout is called homogeneous mixture. That means such mixtures have only one phase. Such mixtures have only one phase. So, a homogeneous mixture is a one phase system. For example, look, air. Now, air has many gases. That means there are many components. But look students, they all exist in one phase. Air is in one phase. Similarly, when we dissolve sugar in water, we get a solution. And that solution has only one phase. Means, आपको sugar एक बार water में dissolve हो जाए तो now you cannot differentiate between water and sugar molecules. So there is only one phase. So we say sugar solution is sugar dissolved in water is a homogeneous mixture. Again seawater has many salts dissolved in water, but they all exist in one phase. Even alloys like brass, bronze, they have many metals, but they exist in one phase. Even amalgams are also homogeneous mixtures. So student, homogeneous mixtures, since the individual components or individual components cannot be clearly they cannot be separated or distinguished, we say homogeneous mixtures are what? They are also called solutions. So every solution is a homogeneous mixture. Now we have second type of mixture, that is heterogeneous, and hetero word का मतलब ही होता है different. So students, heterogeneous mixtures are those in which the composition is not same throughout. The composition is not same throughout. That means a heterogeneous mixture has more than one phase, and the composition of the phases of a heterogeneous mixture is different. So we generally say heterogeneous mixture has more than one phase, and generally it is formed by mixing two components, two substances, maybe two liquids which are immiscible, which means which do not mix into one another. For example, water and oil. So when we mix water and oil, since oil and water are immiscible, there are two phases and composition of both the phases is different. So students, after this discussion, now we'll move on to the basic components of all matter, that is atoms and molecules. So students, what do you mean by an atom? Student, this atom word is derived from a Greek word atomio, which means indivisible. Means इसका further division नहीं हो सकता, means आप इसको further break नहीं कर सकते. That means atom किसी भी substance का सबसे छोटा particle हुआ. So what is an atom? An atom is the smallest particle which may or may not be capable of independent existence. So an atom is the smallest particle of element, we can say, which may or may not be capable of independent existence. So एटम इसका मतलब किसी भी एलिमेंट का एक सबसे छोटा यूनिट होता है जिसका इंडिपेंडेंट एग्जिस्टेंस हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता है. लाइक कुछ एटम्स हैं जिनका इंडिपेंडेंट एग्जिस्टेंस हो सकता है, लाइक गोल्ड एटम्स कैन एग्जिस्ट इंडिपेंडेंटली, silver atoms can exist independently. But look, there are some atoms which cannot exist independently, like hydrogen exists as H2, chlorine as Cl2, nitrogen as N2. So atoms, they may or may not have independent existence. Now, what is a molecule? Molecule क्या होता है? So student, molecule is also smallest particle of an element or compound which is capable of independent existence. Means वो freely exist कर सकता है. Like when we say we have a molecule of say water, that means a water molecule can exist independently. It does not require any other compound or element for existence. So atom is smallest particle of an element which may or may not be capable of independent existence, whereas molecule is also a smallest particle of an element or compound, but a molecule can exist independently. Now we have two types of molecules: homoatomic molecules and heteroatomic molecules. So students, first we will discuss homoatomic molecules. Now the word homo means same, so this means these are those molecules which are composed of which are made up of or composed of atoms of same elements. That means only one kind of atoms are present in homoatomic molecules. Like in hydrogen we have 2 hydrogen atoms, in oxygen molecule we have 2 oxygen atoms, in ozone we have 3 oxygen atoms, but they are atoms of same element. Nitrogen has 2, chlorine Cl2, phosphorus has 4 atoms, but they are of same element phosphorus. Sulfur has 8 atoms. So all these molecules are made up of only atoms of same kind. That means these are homoatomic molecules. Now second type of molecules are called heteroatomic, and hetero means different. So these molecules are composed of one or more atoms of different elements. So these are composed of one or more atoms, but they are of different elements. Like we have a HCl molecule which is made up of atoms of 2 elements, hydrogen and chlorine. We have water which is made up of atoms of 2 different elements, hydrogen and oxygen. We have ammonia which is made up of nitrogen and hydrogen. We have carbon dioxide which is made up of atoms of different elements, carbon and oxygen. Now students, as you see, a molecule may contain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 atoms. Now this is called atomicity. So the next term we have is atomicity. So what is atomicity? Number of atoms present in one molecule of a substance is called atomicity. So depending upon how many atoms are present in one molecule, we have different types of molecules, like monoatomic molecules. Students, since noble gases, they do not form chemical bonds, they exist in monoatomic state. So these are monoatomic molecules. Then we have diatomic molecules. These molecules contain 2 atoms. Like in oxygen we have 2 atoms, in nitrogen gas we have N2, 2 atoms. Then we have HCl also, where we have 2 atoms, H and chlorine. Then similarly we have triatomic molecules, ozone, water, etc. Then we have tetraatomic molecules, P4, ammonia, phosphine, etc. and so on. So students, this was our discussion about matter and its classification as pure substances, impure substances, and then lastly atoms and molecules. So thank you students.